It's Wednesday, March 17th, and let's talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls. You're listening to Fight Knows About Everything, a Night Shift Radio original. For more information, visit nightshiftradio.com. Hi everyone, I'm your host Michael Fight, and today we're going to talk about something that is this was a huge discovery just the other day. Very big deal in terms of science, in terms of history, and specifically in terms of religion, especially if you are of the Jewish faith or if you even follow Christianity. This is a really big deal, this entire discovery. So scientists on Tuesday announced that they discovered a whole slew of Dead Sea Scrolls that they have now found, and they're starting to go through and translate. It's actually really cool because most of the scrolls have been, ravaged by time, and, they're blackened and you can't really see anything. They use this really cool infrared light, which actually shines and shows where the ink was, and they basically are able to create a digital image for them to go through and learn what the original text is on this. So this is a really big deal. Just to go back, we're going to go back a little bit and talk about the history of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, I am quoting this directly from Wikipedia, just as a heads up, so don't copyright sue me. Anyway, so the Dead Sea Scrolls, also called the Qumran Caves Scrolls, are ancient Jewish and Hebrew religious manuscripts that were found in the Qumran Caves in the Judean desert near Ain Feshka on the northern shore of the Dead Sea in the West Bank. Scholarly consensus dates these scrolls from the last 3 centuries BCE and the 1st century CE. So this is 123 BC and 100, 200 AD, or 0 and 100 AD. The texts have great historical, religious, and linguistic significance because they include the second oldest known surviving manuscripts of works later included in the Hebrew Bible canon, along with the deuterocanonical and extra-biblical manuscripts, which preserve evidence of the diversity of religion, of religious thought in the late Second Temple Judaism. Almost all of the Dead Sea Scrolls are held by the State of Israel in the shrine of the book on the grounds of the Israel Museum, but ownership of the scrolls is disputed by Jordan and Palestine. Now, the Dead Sea Scrolls were actually discovered in a series of 12 caves around the site originally known as the Ain Feshka Caves, as we mentioned earlier, near the Dead Sea in the West Bank, then part of Jordan, between 1946 and 1956, by Bedouin shepherds and a team of archaeologists. The practice of storing worn-out sacred manuscripts in earthenware vessels buried in the earth or within caves is related to the ancient Jewish custom of Geniza. I'm probably completely annihilating that, and I'm sure my Jewish father is probably very upset. Anyways, so this is a really big deal because it's been 70 years since the last time we discovered Dead Sea Scrolls, and these ones lay out a few things. Now, there's nothing really earth-shattering in this so far of what they've translated, but it is part of a really crazy thing. They actually said that these brand new 80 pieces that have been found were actually part of this thing called the Cave of Horror. Right. But the Cave of Horror basically was a cave that was found that had roughly 40 human skeletons inside of it during the 60s. It is a horror because there's a bunch of skeletons in it, and that is scary. Although it kind of reminds me of Jason and the Argonauts, and I expect them to get up and fight to protect the scrolls. That would be really cool. But it basically it was located in this remote canyon just south of Jerusalem. So the artifacts were found during an operation in Israel, these were thought to have basically been part of the larger Dead Sea Scrolls, where basically somebody took them during the early 1900s and ran off with them and was like, hey, listen, it looks like this is a revolt, like something crazy's happening. I'm sorry, I meant 1900 AD, 1900 years ago. And so, they ran off with them, and they were basically hiding them during a Jewish revolt, and hiding them away from people that were coming to basically either destroy them, to erase the religion, or basically to take them. Now, in the 60s, this was a really big deal, and the rush to find all of the Dead Sea Scrolls, as well as all the other things inside of these caves, is very important because they are constantly pillaged, and people are taking the artifacts and the things found and using them to sell on the black market. So the faster that archaeologists and researchers can find these sort of artifacts, find them, translate them, and then, give them back to the people of Jerusalem is the most important thing, because they want to make sure to find the history before it ends up going on the black market and, sitting in some evil white guy's, bathroom or something. So there were a few things to this, like there's slight variations in the Greek and the Hebrew original compared to the Septuagint, which is a translation of Hebrew Bible to Greek made in Egypt in the 3rd and 2nd centuries BC. So there is a few things, like one of the things that's part of these scrolls that were found, not in this specific one, but also earlier, is that it laid out the history of a calendar and showed that during this time there was actually a 364-day year where everything was set up exactly symmetrical, unlike where we have now, where it's like the 30 days, 31, and then February is just like, screw you guys, I'll do what I want. So it was a very interesting thing. And they also noted that in these texts there was found that there was a festival that happened at the start of every single new season. So that was part of the symmetry of the calendar that was designed, which is very interesting, because if you think, obviously before zero, people were going off of a 10-month lunar calendar, and that was very standard until much later when people started switching things over to the calendar that we know now, which is the Gregorian calendar, which is how we see the 12 months laid out and things like that. So this was very interesting to see how they were basically keeping track of a year. This is so this was also a really good shift. Now, one of the other things that they found about this, which was pretty interesting, is that on top of the regular notes, there's actually like notes in the margin. So their assumption is that somebody was writing, maybe a student or someone was writing this information, and then somebody was going in on the notes and being like, correcting and adjusting the text based on this. So this is really interesting that this find. Now, hopefully we learn a lot more information about what exactly is in these texts and what they have in large as to what this means in terms of Jewish history, or just history of the time. Now, these are one of the very few written texts that we can find that hasn't been destroyed either due to time or due to pillaging or wars or what have you, or religious persecution. And a lot of this is going to lead to understanding the history of this time, all this time. And again, we're talking BC, before the birth of Christ. This is, this is the Jewish religion well before Christianity was a thing, but it was one of the first, major monotheistic religions of the time. This was a really big deal. At the time we still had, the Greeks and the Romans running around with their mythos of multiple gods, I can't even think of the word right now, but it's multiple gods. So now we have, I guess, multi-theistic. I don't know. Maybe that's a word. Whereas these were monotheistic, one specific God. So these texts do shed light on a lot of things and a lot of history that we're learning about of this time of, ancient Hebrew and of that ancient time. Very, very insane, wonderful news. This is crazy. So definitely a story we're going to be following up on, ourselves, whether I put it out on the podcast or the YouTube channel or not. This is very interesting. History is very interesting, and I love to read about it. But anyways, thank you very much for watching, everyone. If you like this content, go ahead and hit like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so when new episodes drop on YouTube, you are notified. I have brand new episodes on Monday and Wednesday with a weekly news roundup on Fridays. And for those of you listening over on the podcast world, don't forget to hit follow or subscribe. And of course, if you're willing, leave a rating and review over on Apple Podcasts. It is very, very helpful, and I greatly appreciate it. Of course, you can just share this episode with a friend and hope they do the same, and they tell two friends, and so on, and so on, and so forth. But anyway, thanks for joining me for this latest episode. We will see you on Friday.